What's up, everyone? Welcome to the maiden voyage of the channel, whose name I haven't decided yet. I'm just recording this because it's sort of one of those things that you need to just do and see what happens. This is going to be a channel mainly for community, but also for all kinds of sort of what I call applied archetypal astrology. And that basically just means talking about life in terms of the concept that as above, so below. What's happening in the sky with the planets and everything going on in the celestial bodies above us have a tendency of being reflected in the life that we live down here on Earth. As within, so without. You know, the way that we treat our bodies within and what's happening is kind of what happens on the outside and the experience that we end up having. There are patterns and cycles all around us, and that's something that I'm really passionate about. And I find that when I go out into the world, that's what I talk to people about. And I just get the sense that there are a lot of other people out there that would get a kick out of this and would like to join the conversation. So I'd like to build a community around talking about the things that are happening. I won't get too technical because I don't particularly enjoy talking about the technical aspects. I enjoy looking at them and understanding them myself, but then what I really enjoy doing is speaking about them with people in an accessible way that sort of resonates with people. As a recent example, you know, we had Saturn and Venus conjunct, and so whenever I would see somebody whose father, let's say, would come into their life and there was something about their relationship with their father and some type of a reflection of Venusian themes, for example, relationships or what you value or money and wealth and those things. And then Saturnian principles like the father, boundaries, limitations, the cold hard truth, and those types of things. So I've gone out into my friend groups or community around me and have ended up talking about a lot of these things. And as I'm talking right now, I just kind of get the sense that there is a lot of comfort in knowing that what we're going through is also reflected in the sky. And those things have a way of kind of validating and saying like, well, there's sort of a orchestrated chaos to this. It's not just a random chaos. There's something that I'm supposed to learn here. So with astrology, there's also the signs and the different planets, and there are lower expressions and higher expressions of, let's say, each planet or each sign. And so there's a way you may be dealt the cards that you're dealt, but there's a way to slide along that scale and go from lower expressions to higher expressions. And there really are multiple ways that you can improve the way that you're living based on what you're seeing happening in the sky and the archetypes and the things that are contained in those archetypes for us to learn. So essentially a community that can talk about these things and kind of have some fun with it and saying like, wow, I really am going through that. So in every episode, I imagine that I'll talk about things that I'm experiencing. I'll talk about things that I observe other people experiencing, just in generic terms. And then I'll talk about how that ties in to what's happening in the sky. I also really want this to be something that I would just, I don't do based on catering to some audience. I just would do it because it's fun for me and it's something that I am passionate about. And so this can work either as a journal where I'm just talking to myself, or other people can start to find value in it. And that would be great. If other people find value in it, that's great, but that's not the point of it. Although the point is to foster and nurture a space for community. I think that that's important right now. And that's also one of those things in terms of what's happening in the sky is Pluto has just entered Aquarius and communities are transforming. and the way that people connect is transforming. And I think that the need for community has really increased and will be increasing even more. I think there's a trend, for example, that we've relied on the market and, let's say, the government or the larger institutions to sort of give us a place to be and to provide for us. And I think there's largely an introspection happening, and the trend is that people are turning more towards smaller communities. They're finding more community, more fulfillment in smaller communities, in tighter knit communities that share interests and are seeking to help each other in a more intimate and person-to-person kind of way, rather than this larger market, larger trend, macro kind of way. So that's just one example. I mean, that's going to come up in a lot of things that I talk about, is what is the trend that I am seeing based on the astrology that I'm understanding. And, this is the type of channel where I seek to empower the viewer or the person viewing this, and so that they can start to learn this stuff. So a lot of this will be 101 stuff. I'll do certain episodes that teach certain concepts that I'll cover a lot. And then if I cover that in a future episode, I'll refer back to, like, watch this episode on, let's say, the planets and the archetypes of the planets. And that'll kind of give you a better sense of what I'm talking about. Because it's cool to watch and learn from someone else that just already knows it. My approach is a bit more like, if you do want to know for yourself, which I would encourage, because that is an empowering thing to do. If you want to learn it for yourself, I will teach some of those things that I've learned. And I think that I would really only put something up there that I thought was really valuable in saying, I learned it, and man, when I learned it, that really clicked something for me and made everything more cohesive for me. The concept of archetypes is one of those things that once I really started to grasp what that meant, I started seeing it everywhere, and that made everything so much more cohesive for me, and it made it so that I understood the world and my life a lot better, but I could also sort of describe people's experiences a lot more effectively, and it kind of changed everything, and I just stumbled upon it based on I just had this, huge desire and passion for learning astrology, kind of out of a very small event, but I just wanted to demystify the whole thing because I caught the glimpse of like cycles and patterns, and archetypes then started coming in, and that entered into like movies and books and these types of things that contain these archetypes, and then we are living these archetypes every day. And archetypes is basically like the same story that's being told over and over again. You say like, there's an archetype of a chair, all right? So there are all these different types of chairs, and you can look at a chair that you've never seen before, but know that it fits in the category of chair. You could say something with 4 legs, but it might have 3, it might have 5. There's not like a set way, but there's a spirit or an essence of that thing that is chair. So for example, there's also an archetype, like we talked about, Saturn, Venus conjunction. There's an archetype, and in fact, it's 2 archetypes meeting and combining and merging into a new thing. And so it's all these combinations, they're infinite combinations, but once you learn the archetypes, it's almost like if you've ever learned a musical instrument and you learn the different chords. Once you learn the chords, then you can play almost any song. And it becomes something like a language. Once you learn those basic phrases, then those start to kind of describe and sort of make up this larger picture of what's happening. But there are basic things at the core that if you go deeper into those basic things at that depth, then the whole thing kind of starts to open up. So there's a lot of value that I perceive in having learned astrology and the archetypal astrology in particular. Astrology essentially is this as above, so below concept that says essentially you can decipher what is happening here based on what's happening up there. And it's cyclical in nature. There are patterns, and these patterns repeat. And so there's a certain level of, you can kind of anticipate what you might be learning. You can anticipate where things are going, and you can really decipher what the lesson is that particular transit, which means a planet moving in a certain into a certain sign, and being close to certain planets. And then you can look into your own birth chart, which is essentially just a snapshot of the sky when you're born. So you can overlay your own birth chart and the current transits as they move, and you can kind of see what's going on right now for you personally. And you can also just look at the trans and say what's going on for the collective. And there are so many layers to this, but it'll basically just follow in the sense of, I'll talk about what's going on in my life. And this is essentially, I'm setting an intention with this channel. The intention is building a community that talks about this concept of as above, so below, and to better describe what we're experiencing and to derive more value from it, and to really go vertically into this experience of life instead of staying on the surface level and just sort of avoiding what's painful, going towards what's pleasurable. You can kind of seek out these more meaningful and more in-depth experiences in life. I think that one of the things that has really been a catalyst for this happening was I recently lost my job at an institution, a big institution where I played a part as a cog in the wheel, and I felt like I was important, and I felt like other people thought that I was important. I have a legal background. I used to practice immigration law, and then I went into like a nonprofit setting where I did a lot of things for that organization, and I was kind of the face for that organization in a lot of settings. And it was things that while I was in it, I thought were very important. Now, when that went away, then I had to figure out what was left below all of those roles that I was playing. There was a community aspect to this job as well. And so that community sort of disappeared in a day, and I had to figure out what roles I was playing for that community, what roles I was playing for the institution, and then what was left underneath when all of that went away. And that caused a huge transformation in my life that shed layer after layer after layer. And all of this, I was being guided by my understanding of the archetypes, the transits, what the planets were doing, what was happening above, and I was experiencing it on a physical level. I had certain people come into my life, and I could see the synastry, which basically means their birth chart with my birth chart, and how those things were interacting. And I saw, oh wow, I have a Saturnian friend coming in and functioning like a coach, like a mentor, that's kind of pointing out these different things that I'm going to go through, and looking ahead and saying, look, you're going to be on an island, you're going to experience shedding these layers. And sure enough, I did. And I kind of realized that, wow, that person coming in is like a Saturnian figure. And me understanding that, I'm saying, wow, like I really can lean on this person, because they're sort of like coming in as this coach to like help me through something that could otherwise be a lot more difficult if I were doing it on my own. There were also other things coming in saying, you know, the lighter you are when Pluto comes across that opposition with Mars, The lighter you are, the easier it's going to be. But if you hold on to things like anger or resentment, or if you're essentially energizing the thing that you're resisting, because what you resist persists, then Pluto is going to make it a lot harder on you. But if you are lighter, then Pluto will empower you, will give you this new version of yourself, because it is also the planet of transformation. Now, astrologically, we all still call it a planet. Astronomically, it's been demoted, although Pluto always wins, so we'll see how that happens. We'll see how that goes in the future. But all of these things kind of informed my journey, so I'll share a little bit more about all of that. But basically, what catalyzed this whole thing and brought about this channel was something that I could have considered a crisis. But what I realized was that that was happening for me, not to me. And I was able to take all of these things that were happening in the sky and applying it to myself and realizing, oh wow, this is an opportunity. And so this channel is a consequence of that all happening. So we'll dive more into more details, but I basically just wanted to set an intention here and say, welcome anybody who might view this. And I think that we're going to dive into some really cool concepts that are going to explain and go more in depth into our lives a lot more. I'm really looking forward to the community that I really sense is going to sprout up around this. And setting an intention, I think, is a very powerful thing. I think the intention that I would like to set is for me to feel that I can be authentically myself, and so that anybody that might watch this can also authentically be themselves as they watch it. That's just the energy is going to resonate that way. If I'm not being authentic, then it's not going to resonate with somebody who wants to be authentic. If somebody's looking for a way to justify a bad habit, I'm probably not going to be the person to watch. If somebody's looking to dig into, let's say, a bad habit and really figure out, hey, what's causing this? What's the root of that? What's the archetype here? What's the real lesson here? Then you're probably going to be in the right place. And I really look forward to the community sprouting up around it. I look forward to the things that I'll learn just as I'm speaking. It really is something about getting your hands on a thing and not thinking, like, you can't conceptually figure something out fully until you get your hands on it. That's what I learned. I also built this tiny house that I'm in. And when in the night before, I'd think about a project that I needed to do the next day, and it would never really materialize. And I would almost get anxious about what that result would be. And then the next morning I get there, I get my hands on it, and then the solution came. And so there was a lesson there. And so honestly, I just sat here and I pushed record, and I was like, all right, let's just see what comes out. So this is what came out. And I believe that that's therefore what wants to be born, what wants to come about in this sort of channel that I'm starting. I'll also look and say, okay, I think about 15 to 20 minute episodes is kind of what I'll shoot for, because that's a palatable amount and it takes a while to digest some of this stuff. So we'll move through it as quickly as we go. I'm going to figure this out as I go, but welcome. I think you landed in the right place. And I think I landed in the right place too. So I look forward to seeing what we learn together.